Hi, everyone. This is Julia. We had this webinar yesterday, but we were having some connection issues, so we wanted to give you all a good, clean recording that didn't have jumpy audio. So just as a reminder, this is going to be a very basic overview of the federal requirements that are involved. So let's get started. So as you all are aware, this funding comes from the EPA, and along with this funding, we must follow federal requirements. We will start off by discussing Davis-Bacon and related acts, then Build America, Buy America, and we will close out the presentation touching on other cross-cutter requirements. Davis-Bacon and related acts, often called DBRA, I like to call it DEBRA, set the labor rules that we have to follow on federally funded construction projects. These acts ensure that workers are getting paid fair, prevailing wages when federal money is involved. DEBRA covers a wide range of construction activities, including things like renovations, installations, painting, and even certain off-site fabrication work when it's tied to the project. It includes a few key laws: the Davis-Bacon Act itself, which sets the prevailing wage requirements, the Copeland Anti-Kickback Act, which basically makes sure no one pressures workers into giving up part of their pay, and the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, which requires overtime pay for work over 40 hours a week on larger contracts. So to sum it all up, DEBRA ensures laborers and mechanics on these federally supported projects are paid fairly and treated properly. On the subrecipient side, there are a few key responsibilities when you're entering into and managing contracts. Before you award a contract, you need to make sure the correct Davis-Bacon wage determinations are included in your bid documents and contracts. EPA treats recipients as contract agencies, so you're responsible for following the federal procedures around that. You also have to include the standard DEBRA language in every contract so contractors know exactly what they're agreeing to. After the contract is awarded, your role shifts into oversight. You may need to work with the contractor to request additional wage rates if something comes up that isn't covered in the original determination. And then throughout the process, you're responsible for making sure contractors are following all DEBRA requirements. So in short, get the wage info right up front, include the required language, and then keep an eye on compliance as work moves forward. So here are some of the things you will need to ensure is happening on your sites if your project is subject to DEBRA. Job sites will need to have the official Davis-Bacon wage poster available and protected from the elements. Following the same requirements as the poster, the official Davis-Bacon wage decision or a project wage rate sheet needs to be posted on the site. An important consideration here is that it should be prepared after the wage decisions are locked in. Payrolls are also required weekly. There is an optional payroll form linked here that you're welcome to use. The important thing to note here is that the form is optional, but the information on it is not. So you got to make sure it has all the required language. And the prime contractor is also required to review subcontractor forms prior to submission. Lastly, payroll retention is required for 3 years after the project is complete. You must also complete interviews with contractors to ensure they are being paid fair and treated fairly. There is no requirement for how often or how many interviews you have to complete, so use your discretion here. So moving on from DEBRA, Build America, Buy America, aka BABA, basically says that since we're using federal dollars for an infrastructure project, we need to make sure the materials are made here in the US, and that applies to iron and steel, manufactured products, and construction materials. For iron and steel, every step of the manufacturing process has to happen in the US, and for manufactured products, the final product must be made here, and most of the components, over 55%, have to be US sourced. And for construction materials, all of the manufacturing needs to be done domestically. And at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to EPA's BABA page, and it has some good information on there. So when we talk about whether BABA applies, the key thing to remember here is that it also covers infrastructure projects that support waste management and recycling. That includes facilities like transfer stations, MRFs, compost sites, or digesters. And even the equipment that is essential to how those facilities operate, like sorters and shredders. There's also a bit of nuance with vehicles and mobile equipment. If a piece of equipment is used exclusively for the project, like a recycling truck that only serves the recycling program, then it falls under BABA. But if it's a multi-purpose vehicle, like a pickup truck that gets used for a mix of project and non-project tasks, then BABA wouldn't apply. And so this is a test to determine if your project is subject to BABA. If there are any gray areas of interpretation, you should contact your grant manager for further guidance. So we start on the very left. Is the project funded in whole or in part by EPA, federal financial assistance? And that would be a yes for all of you. So we move on to the next one. Does the project involve the construction, alteration, including installation, maintenance, or repair of public infrastructure in the US? And this is regardless of whether infrastructure is the primary purpose of the award. If this is a yes, you move on. Does the project involve iron, steel, manufactured products, or construction materials that will be incorporated or consumed by the project? And if this is also a yes, you continue to move on. Is the project for public use or will it serve a public function? And so if all the answers to the questions are yes, then the project must be compliant with BABA. Waivers may be granted. However, we have been advised that the waiver process can take months. So if you're considering a waiver for your project, you should start acting now. So just very briefly on how this all works. So the Office of Management and Budget, which houses the Made in America office, put out a guidance into CFR 184 that specifies what produced in the US means for each of these categories of products. So all of those products that get incorporated into the infrastructure project have to demonstrate that they comply with BABA requirements unless they're explicitly excluded either by a statute or waived by the EPA. Importantly, all of these requirements are going to flow down from that federal award to all of the sub-awards and the sub-recipients and the subcontractors. And it's going to apply to the entire project, even if the project is not all federally funded, and even if infrastructure is not the main purpose of the project. So if you have $1 of federal funds into a project that includes public infrastructure and it's funded by a federal grant or loan, BABA is going to apply to all those iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials that incorporate it. So what this means for financial assistance recipients and subrecipients is that you have to include this requirement language in all of your request for proposals, all of your contracts, and subcontracts. You also need to make sure that all of your documentation confirms you've either complied with BABA, say with a manufacturer certification letter, or that you have a waiver that was issued by the EPA for certain products that don't need to comply with BABA. So I'm not going to go through all of these because we will be here all day. These are just the categories that statutory, regulatory, and executive order requirements fall into. Linked at the bottom of the slide is a guidance document created by the EPA that provides a description of each requirement. The EPA also provided us with a checklist concerning cross-cutter requirements that may apply to your projects. We intend on helping you all fill that checklist out to ensure compliance with these requirements. And that is it for the presentation today. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or anyone on the team.